So I did my presentation kind of on the Boston Massacre and having them use the Boston Massacre in different pieces of art that depicted the Boston Massacre to kind of get used to using primary sources. So in light of that, my standards are obviously just the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks that kind of just touch on the Boston Massacre. So this is the full standard, but I'm not going to, this lesson doesn't really talk about, well, the assessment doesn't really talk about the Boston Tea Party or Lexington Concord or any of the people, it's just the Boston Massacre. But really what this assessment's really going to have them practice is the Common Core standards down here. So the central ideas of a primary source and a secondary source, comparing the point of view of different authors, whether that's a primary source or a secondary source, and then comparing how those different sources treat the same topic. So obviously I'm going to have them use two sources, both a primary source and a secondary source, and how those treat the Boston Massacre. So the objectives, I have a bunch here, just really students being able to understand the Boston Massacre, evaluate these pieces of art, evaluate how they're treating the topic, and then obviously psychomotor, they're going to be making a poster, which I'll get to in a second. So yeah, the assignment, like I just said, they're going to be making a poster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to group them up in groups of preferably 3 to 4, but obviously it depends on the class size. And they're going to be asked to kind of describe, well, not answer questions on one of the 2 pieces of art. Not going to do both, it just each group is going to get assigned one of them. So like the idea would be, say if I have 4 groups of 3, 2 groups would do one painting, 2 groups would do the other. And so we're going to discuss them as a class first, just because obviously, especially because really this is geared toward an 8th grade class, analyzing art isn't really an easy thing to do for anyone, unless you're really into art. So we're going over those with students first is going to be helpful, but then they're going to answer those questions by creating a poster. And so what that poster needs to have, it has to answer all those questions fully, just kind of be like an attractive looking poster, right? Organized, neat, have some color in it, really make it pretty. And then they're going to have to present that in front of the class. So obviously the rubric is going to touch on volume and clarity, just being able to actually present. Can I understand you? Do I know what you're saying? Are you speaking loud enough? Is your poster neat? Can I read all of the words? Is it neatly organized? And then analysis, did you actually answer all the questions and did you answer them correctly? It's not just, you put random things on the poster. Like you have to answer all 4 questions. And you have to show a clear ability to analyze these sources. And then use of class time, it's really just going to be, you're working with your groups, you're making your poster. And if I have to constantly talk to your group, points are going to get taken off. But if you're just working together, getting your poster done, then you're going to get full credit on that. So the first one is going to be an engraving made by Paul Revere. So obviously this one is a primary source. It wasn't made right at the time of the Boston Massacre. It was made a little bit later, but it's, in terms of sources, it is pretty much a primary source. And so what I'm going to ask them to do is, looking at this painting, who looks like the victim, because obviously with the Boston Massacre, that's a huge debate, is whether or not the British soldiers just fired on them for no reason, or whether or not they were antagonizing the soldiers and that's what caused them to fire. So obviously if Paul Revere is an American, it's going to change his opinion on whether or not they antagonized them or whether or not they just shot. And so that comes in later in question 4. But between those, they're going to have to describe the behavior of the crowd and the behavior of the actions of the soldiers. So you can see in this one, the crowd doesn't look like they're doing anything too crazy, but the soldiers are obviously firing. You have the leader telling them to fire. He's behind them, he's yelling to fire. It's clear that they're making this motion. It doesn't look like it's self-defense. And then the other one would be William L. Champney's version of it, which was made significantly later. It was made in the 1820s. I know it says 1770, but that's just the title of the painting. It wasn't made in 1770. It was made in the 1820s. But then obviously, if you just look at the painting, it's completely different. So this group is going to have, so whatever group gets assigned this is going to have to deal with this painting. And all the questions are pretty much the same. They're just tweaked a little bit because it's a different painting. But they're basically asked to do the same thing. They're just keeping in mind that William L. Champney is British. He's from England. He's not an American. So if you just look at the painting, you look at the 2 differences, it's a completely different image. And this is my example. You've got a little image, color. It's obviously people firing at each other. They look like they're colonists, so it looks like you actually understand what's going on, just enough that I know what you're talking about. So this one, you can see they wrote right at the top, well, me, wrote right at the top which painting they're doing. They answer the question, so if you look, who looks like the victims? Neither, they both look like they're at fault. How would you describe their behavior? They're violent or unorganized, almost barbaric. And what's key is I'm writing in full sentences when I do this, and that's really important. I don't want them to just be able to say their analysis and just like bullet points. It's really important, especially in history, that you're able to analyze things and really put that into words and writing, and write in coherent sentences about what your beliefs and your ideas are. So that's really the focus of this, is really just being able to analyze. And so being able to write coherent sentences shows that I can analyze these pieces. And that's pretty much it.